Good Friday afternoon to you. Hope your weekend is off to a great start. We will talk plenty of Browns football. Had a little bit of a power hit here at the studio, so we were unable to come to you yesterday. Everything under control and ready to go. Tim Bielik will join us in a little bit. We'll talk some NFL draft news with him. But we begin by talking Browns football. When we talk Browns football, we always like to welcome in Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter here on cleveland.com, as well as in the pages of the Plain Dealer. Dan, some news just broke not long ago. Sheldon Richardson released by the Browns, defensive tackle. Now, he was due to make $13.6 million in salary. There is a $1.6 million plus a little change dead cap money hit, so $12 million in savings on the salary cap. With the release of Sheldon Richardson, defensive tackle last year, 64 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 30-some solos. A little bit of a surprising move. What do you make of Richardson's release?
You know, I was surprised when it happened, and right now I guess this is one of those let's trust in Andrew Berry moments. He's earned the benefit of the doubt, and we'll see how this plays out. You mentioned the money with Sheldon Richardson, and maybe this is the Browns playing the long game a little bit, deciding to go with, they've got Jordan Elliott, Malik Jackson, Andrew Billings. Maybe they draft a defensive tackle now higher than maybe we would have expected. So they've got some guys in there, and maybe they're looking at this as, yes, it's the last year of Sheldon Richardson's contract, but maybe this turns into cap rollover space or gives them some flexibility down the road and, early in camp if they want to sign somebody or make a trade. But, this is a move that I don't love right now. But at the same time, maybe a year from now or 2 years from now, we're saying, okay, that worked out. But this is just sort of let's give Andrew Berry and his crew the benefit of the doubt at this point because they've earned it.
And the other thing is you brought up a really important point. Remember, this could be as far as you can roll over cap savings. So you're going to need that money coming up because you have some extensions that are due next year.
Right, and that could be part of their thinking here is planning into the future. I hate to sit and worry about the cap in like 2025, but that's part of Andrew Berry and Paul DePodesta and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's job. They've got to worry about the cap down the road as they hand out some of these extensions. I don't think the cap will be as crunched as maybe some people do. I think that TV money will kick in and give teams a lot more space. But the reality is this roster is going to start to transform itself into a top-heavy roster where you have a few guys on top getting paid, and then you've got to supplement it with draft picks. And let's also not forget, when you look at cap space, they've also got two veteran receivers who are getting close to 30, both making, together $30 million. So, this move kind of sends the signal that how sustainable is that moving forward? I don't think anything will happen this offseason in that regard, but that's something to keep an eye on moving forward with how they approach Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry. And
again, this is something that good franchises that have talent have to do every single year. So, welcome to the NFL, Browns fans. This is the reality of running in a successful and talent-rich franchise.
Yeah, you're going to have to give up guys that you like, and it's going to be veteran guys, and Sheldon Richardson is one of those. I mean, he's kind of the prime example. And coming into this offseason, I wondered if the Browns might make a move there. But, as it all kind of played out, it seemed like he might end up being safe. But then you add Malik Jackson. I mentioned those guys with Andrew Billings coming back. Jordan Elliott is a guy they really liked last year, and he's a guy that Pro Football Focus really likes. They had him pretty high up on their draft board last year, and the Browns got him in the third round. We didn't hear his name called a lot, but he played a decent amount. So at some point, he's got to get his opportunity. And when you kind of do that math, now you add Jadeveon Clowney into the mix. I don't know if that's a direct choice, but that certainly impacted Sheldon Richardson's future here.
And the other thing that is important to note, Clowney can kick inside and play inside some. So there's some versatility there. You wrote a really interesting article. What does Clowney signing tell us about Andrew Berry? Take us through that and kind of the conclusion you came to.
Well, one of the things is he's persistent. With Tack McKinley, going back to him, the Browns tried to get him 3 times via waivers last year, and they also tried to trade for him before the deadline. It didn't happen. He's a free agent. They go back and they get him. Jadeveon Clowney, same deal. They tried to get him last year. They were aggressive last offseason. in trying to add Clowney. It didn't work out, but he's still a guy that Barry wanted on this defensive line. So he went and he got him. And Clowney even pointed that out in his press conference with us. He said, he was impressed with the persistence that Andrew Barry showed. The other thing is there's a plan with how they want to spend their money. They gave Myles Garrett a huge extension. So, the likelihood of them going out and signing a Trey Hendrickson for 4 years, $15 million a year, or Carl Lawson for 3 years, $45 million a year, just kind of didn't feel realistic as we saw what those price tags were going to be. And what they've basically done is they've taken Clowney at somewhere in the range of 8 to 10 million, depending how he does, and Takk McKinley somewhere in the range of 4 to 6 million. They've kind of addressed that position. And yes, they're paying as much as Hendrickson is making. They're paying as much as Lawson is making, but it's only for a year. And so now they can draft somebody if they want to. They kind of have still created some cost control on that defensive line by kind of going 2 for 1 there.
The other thing that's important to note, Andrew Barry has guys that he thinks can play and can fill a role, and that doesn't change. I mean, that's the other thing that this says about him. And you point to McKinley and you point to Clowney, and those are, again, 2 guys he identified as being fits and went and got them.
Yeah, he knows the type of player he wants. And I do like the fact that even a year later, even though Clowney shunned them, he went back to him and tried to bring him back. And Clowney mentioned that he has a new agent. His agent really wanted him to visit Cleveland, and Clowney was impressed. And the other part of this is, an off season ago, the Browns were still they were coming off a 6-10 season. Kevin Stefanski was a new coach. Joe Woods was the defensive coordinator, hadn't done that in a few years. There were still a lot of questions about this organization and this franchise and the direction they were going. There were big questions about Baker Mayfield still. And Clowney came back this year and visited a very different organization, an organization that, like he said, won more games than the team he went to last year won. So he's coming into a very different building, a more stable organization. I think that made a difference too.
Well, the other thing is a lot of people are giving the Browns roster plenty of credit, saying, they're a team that could challenge Kansas City as the best team in the AFC, certainly one of the favorites in the NFC. And then there are other guys like Stephen A. Smith, who is kind of channeling his inner Juju Smith-Schuster as far as what he's saying about the Browns and this roster. Let's listen to Stephen A. Smith.
Well, they're contenders, but I'm not gonna give them the nod as the favorites because they're the Browns. What can go wrong will go wrong to some degree by Lake Erie. This is what it has been, and this is what it will continue to be. Now, they've obviously improved. You got Baker Mayfield that went up in touchdowns from 22 to 26 from the previous year, but he went down in interceptions from 21 to 8. So Kevin Stefanski deserves a boatload of credit. He did a hell of a job last year as the head coach for the franchise. Him and Barry as the GM, obviously an African-American, very, very proud of what he's doing thus far. They're definitely a contender. I'll give them props and credit for that. I don't know how big of a pickup Clowney is. Remember that Clowney is supposed to be somebody that can register sacks, Max. He's got like 3 in the last 2 years. Not a single sack last year in the 8 games he played in Tennessee, just 3 the year before he played in Seattle. And let's also be honest about the fact that he's lost out because this guy was looking for about 18 to 20 million a year when he ended up departing from Seattle. And now he's signing 1-year deals worth up to $10 million. Obviously, there's incentives in that contract that's going to get him to $10 million. So somewhere along the way, what you feel about him, evidently a lot of people don't because they ain't willing to pay him to have them on their team, the exorbitant amount of dollars that he was looking for. Him being there with Myles Garrett and Sheldon Richardson, I get it. They're formidable, no doubt about it. But when I look at the rest of the AFC, this is the AFC North that we're talking about here. And I think it's the division that has been historically owned by Pittsburgh or Baltimore, and I think that will continue to be the case.
Disagree with that, but that's okay. And again, that was obviously before the Browns released Sheldon Richardson today. I don't think the Browns can necessarily argue with that as far as what history has been, but they're also not into history. What happens this year has nothing to do with the Browns teams of the past.
Yeah, that's really the issue I have with kind of that argument is you can't just look at the team and say, well, they're the Browns. To me, that's just not fair. I think we've seen how this organization has turned it around over the last year, how they've been stabilized with Paul DePodesta and Andrew Barry and Kevin Stefanski. And that's not to say that it is going to be smooth sailing. That's not to say that the Browns couldn't come out next year and for whatever reason end up disappointing and not living up to expectations. It happens in the NFL. But I don't think it's going to be because, the Browns are the Browns. It'll be because some things just go wrong. And I still think the long-term outlook on this team is good. And it seems like ownership, Jimmy Haslam and they've kind of stayed out of things and they haven't meddled as much, and they've let Paul DePodesta kind of stabilize the ship. And I think that's the biggest reason to be optimistic. So I'm just not a fan of saying, well, the Browns aren't the favorite because they're the Browns. If you want to make a legitimate case for Baltimore or even Pittsburgh, that's fine. But I don't think saying the Browns are the Browns is the reason that they can't be the favorite.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. A little bit lazy, but it is what it is. And once you continue to you do that 1 year, it's one thing. You do it 2, 3, 4 years, and then that narrative just gets pushed to the back. Dan and I have to take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, some news about Browns players and voluntary workouts, as well as some more national perspectives on the Browns roster with the signing of Jadeveon Clowney. Sports4CLE will continue talking Browns. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Sports4CLE continues. I'm Dave Bacon, and the Browns signed Jadeveon Clowney to a one-year contract yesterday, and opinions on Clowney's effectiveness vary all over the place. A lot of national people think he's got some stuff left and a lot left. Some also think, he hasn't quite lived up to that number one overall draft status, number one overall pick in the draft. An interesting take from LeVar Arrington, who was the second overall pick in the draft. And Arrington says the expectations may have been unrealistic because of a certain in particular play from Clowney back in college.
Every single time we want to justify Jadeveon Clowney's greatness, we show this play. And I didn't even, I did not even know this was queued up. I did not even know, but I know this is the play that we use to justify Jadeveon Clowney's greatness. You can't, listen, I had a play named after me, all right? LeVar leap. I hear about the leap all the time.
Yes, that's right.
That could be the biggest setback. That could have been Jadeveon's biggest setback, was making this play, because we are going to judge Jadeveon Clowney off of the potential of him doing this every single play. That's the problem when you do that type of stuff and you're not seeing the production. It's good to get tackles, a couple tackles for a loss, a couple sacks here and there.
Practice.
But you're not going to you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be happy unless you see these things out of Jadeveon Clowney. And you know I'm right, B-Mark. You know I'm right.
For the record, LeVar Arrington only played 7 years in the NFL. So, but you know what? I don't care if they named a play after LeVar Arrington. That play by Clowney was a whole lot better than anything else that happened. Let's bring Dan Labbe back in. And Dan, I remember watching that play when it happened and was like, whoa.
Yeah, and you know what? He's right in the fact that when you think of Clowney, that is absolutely the first thing that pops into your head is that hit. And it is sort of what put him on the national stage and helped propel him to being the number one overall pick. You know, I think the thing is when we talk about Clowney, we do need to frame it a little bit differently, especially in a Browns uniform, because when you do pick a pass rusher number one overall, you expect him to produce at the level that we've seen Myles Garrett produce. You expect him to be one of the absolute best pass rushers in football. And Clowney has not lived up to necessarily that high standard, but he's not coming here to be Myles Garrett. And he's not coming here to be the Browns' top pass rusher. He's coming here to kind of benefit and eat off of what Myles Garrett can do and be single teamed. And, you know, he mentioned in his press conference, he suffered that injury his rookie year and he still hasn't fully recovered from it, or he thinks it's at least held him back over his career. If Browns fans are judging Clowney off of, hey, this guy is a number one pick, then maybe they will be disappointed. But if they're judging him as a guy that can come here and be a legitimate number two pass rusher and a good run defender, and he can make some plays here and there, and I keep saying this, if he can make one play for you in the playoffs that changes a game, he's worth every single penny, and I think he has that potential.
And in fairness to Jadeveon Clowney, he hasn't been healthy. Microfracture surgery, you know, that affects the way you run, and that was a big part of his game. So we'll get back to a little bit more on Jadeveon Clowney. News that the Browns players have decided that they will skip voluntary workouts. Not a surprise, just a reaction to that. And, you know, their point is pandemic's still going on. We still want to be cognizant of that. And we want to cut down on injuries. You know, we have a 17-game season now, and those are the type of things they want to protect their bodies.
Yeah, and then we kind of knew the Browns were going to do this because when you've got the president of the players union on your team and other teams are releasing statements through the union that they're going to boycott some of these off-season activities, of course the Browns are eventually going to follow suit because of J.C. Trutter's involvement. You know, the off-season program is always so weird because it's the NFL and it just dominates the news cycle. And I think Browns fans remember a few years ago when Odell Beckham wasn't showing up to the voluntary portions. And then when he came to minicamp, he didn't really practice a whole lot. So we kind of overrate, I think, what the offseason program. Any coach in the NFL that hears me say that is going to say, no way, we need this. We want to coach. We want to find these young guys. I think ultimately what this is going to lead to is the two sides are going to come back to the negotiating table and come up with a longer-term solution to how to do this offseason program where you can give players the opportunity to do a lot of it virtually, but maybe get them in your building for, you know, if not 10 OTA practices in a minicamp, maybe 2 or 3 weeks in May or something like that. I think ultimately that's where this is going to lead to.
And again, the point that it went seamlessly last year, I mean, it's a valid one. If I'm a player, I want to, saving my body prolongs my career, which makes me more money. I get it. Their body is you know, their livelihood.
And we've always kind of known, like, okay, we can see the value in this thing, but it's not really super important. It's not a reason a team wins the Super Bowl, loses the Super Bowl. And it's the same with like preseason games, right? We go through kind of that same thing every single year. And now it's going to be reduced to 3 preseason games. We kind of know they don't matter that much, especially when we're seeing more and more starters not even play a single preseason game. So it's not a surprise that the union is kind of looking at what happened last year and trying to sort of push this idea that we don't need to show up in April and attend meetings and lift weights when coaches can't even coach us and we can't even go on the field and wear helmets, or even in the early part of the program, you can't even hold a football unless you're a quarterback or throwing to a wide receiver off to the side. So I think they're sort of pushing back a little bit on this idea that you've got to be in that building from April until June.
All right, back to an interesting discussion. So Uncle Colin Cowherd, again, crazy Uncle Colin, had an interesting take as far as the Browns roster goes. Let's listen to Colin Cowherd.
Jadeveon Clowney is now a member of the Cleveland Browns. Don't listen to the critics. He can play. He's not as good as you thought he would be out of college, but he can play. This now means Cleveland has 10 former first-round picks and 3 former number 1 picks. Nobody else can say that. Baker, there's only 2 things keeping this Cleveland Brown team from getting to a Super Bowl. Injuries, which absolutely nobody can predict, and the quarterback. Because I can think of about 8, 9, 10 quarterbacks that if you gave these edge rushers to, can you imagine if Dak Prescott, beyond his offensive personnel, had the best O-line and this defense? This is a championship team, and only 2 things will stop it: Baker or injuries. And so far, both are hard to predict. But now Baker has the number 1 offensive line and the number 1 running backs. Tight ends are outstanding, the best pure edge rusher in the NFL. They upgraded their secondary. It's go time. Baker now joins in a very elite club. I would call it the pressure club. There's 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, no more excuses. Matt Stafford, Baker Mayfield, Carson Wentz, Kyler Murray, and Daniel Jones. There's just way too much talent around you now.
Reaction to that, Dan?
You know, I hate to say this, but at least to some degree, I do agree a little bit with Colin Cowherd that this is sort of no excuses time for Baker Mayfield now. He's going into his second year in an offense. We saw what he did over the final, 6 games of the season from about Thanksgiving on, and I thought he played really well in both of those playoff games, including the loss to Kansas City. I thought he was really good in that football game. He's got that offensive line. He's got that weapons. I don't think every game is going to be a shootout now. This defense is going to be able to give him the football back in favorable positions. I think it is sort of, to me, when you look at the talent on this roster, all Baker Mayfield has to be is maybe above average, and I think he's better than that. And so, yeah, I think there is some pressure on Baker Mayfield that, okay, your time is now. This is your opportunity to show everybody I belong in that same sentence as Mahomes and Rodgers and whoever else you want to throw up there. So to some degree, and not as extreme as Cowherd likes to be when it comes to Baker Mayfield, but I do think he's onto something. There is pressure on Baker now to take that next step, and everything is set up for him to do it.
Fair enough. It's just interesting how everything with the Browns comes back to Baker Mayfield with crazy Uncle Colin. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out on the other side of the break. Dan and I will take a look at some mock drafts. Would you trade up? Would you trade back? And then a tweet. Colin Cowherd mentioned it. Browns have 3 number 1 overall picks. We'll tell you the last time that happened in the NFL. Sports4CLE will be right back.
Presque Isle Downs and Casino has sports betting. Use one of our 50 state-of-the-art Bet America kiosks to place your bet and watch your favorite games on one of our many HD televisions, or visit our sportsbook area. Only at Presque Isle Downs and Casino.
Better days are ahead. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So what are you waiting for? Register now for online and on-campus summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Sports4CLE continues. Thanks for sticking with us. I'm Dave Bacon. Tom Withers, AP reporter, tweeted out this tweet that we found really interesting. Browns with 3 number 1 overall picks in Clowney, Garrett, and Baker Mayfield become the first team since the 2001 Washington football team when they had Bruce Smith, Kajana Carter, Jeff George, and Dan Wilkinson. As our producer Adam pointed out, Bruce Smith had to be about 80 years old at that point. Let's bring Dan Labbe back in. And Dan, you look at that, and that just kind of reinforces how much talent this Browns roster has on it.
Right, and look at the guys the Browns have versus who Washington had at the time. You know, outside of Bruce Smith, who, like you said, I don't know how old he was at the time, but the Browns, the 3 guys the Browns have are really good and still really young. So they've got Myles Garrett just entering his prime. They've got Baker Mayfield, turned 26 the other day. He's just entering his prime. Jadeveon Clowney, he's not 35 years old, folks. He's still under 30. And, you know, he came out in 2014. So, you know, they've still got these young guys. These number 1 picks are still young and still have upside. And the ceiling is still really high, particularly on Myles Garrett and Baker Mayfield.
So let's turn our attention a little bit to the draft now. I did a mock draft simulation, and my whole idea was Browns need to get up in this draft to have a shot at J.C. Horn. So what I ended up doing is I traded up with the Las Vegas Raiders. You see what I had to give up? I had to give up the 26th pick and number 91. That is the second of their third-round picks. And I got up to 17. And when I did that, guess who was available at 17 for me? J.C. Horn. And you see some of the other guys that were available. So I did, in fact, select J.C. Horn, cornerback from South Carolina. Kind of think he might be the only shutdown corner. Here's how that rest of that unfolded. De'Ami Brown from North Carolina, big play wide receiver. Jamin Davis was available in the 3rd round at pretty much every mock draft I did. I addressed the interior line and then the edge rusher with Patrick Jones from Pittsburgh later in the draft. Overall, they give me a C. Dan, would you trade up in this upcoming draft to get a guy like a J.C. Horn, or do you think the Browns aren't going to do that?
I would do it. I would go after one of these big name corners. Now, if you think a guy like Greg Newsome is going to fall to, you know, just ahead of you and maybe you only have to move up a couple spots, or maybe he's going to fall to you and maybe you like him more, that's fine. But I would absolutely move up to get J.C. Horn. And, you know, this is where Andrew Berry it's kind of the one thing we haven't seen him do yet, right? Is target a guy and figure out exactly where he needs to get in the draft. And this is where you kind of hope that year with John Dorsey kind of taught him that side of things, because that's sort of what John Dorsey was known for. And he did it when Brett Veach and Andy Reid said, go get us Patrick Mahomes, figure out where you need to go. And he did that. So I would like to see the Browns get aggressive. If they really like J.C. Horn, get aggressive, move up and get him. And I think you kind of looked at the right spot when you've got that 89 and 91. Those are the perfect picks to play with in that range.
And the other thing to keep in mind, you know, people that don't want to trade, you know, a third, it's going to be tough for a 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round draft pick to make the squad, because the roster has been upgraded. Now, practice squad and those kind of things, absolutely. But if you can really impact that 53-man roster by spinning off a couple of those later round picks, I think that's where the Browns are now. It's a great place to be as a franchise.
Right. And when you start playing with that practice squad for guys taking that high, you expose them to maybe getting signed away by another team. You don't have the protections you would have if you put them on the roster. So, you know, they've got 9 picks this year, and it's really hard for me to find 9 spots on this roster. Now, down the road, this team is still going to need draft picks. I mentioned earlier, this roster will get top heavy. It will get expensive. And that's when you want to have those draft picks. That's when they start collecting those comp picks, which I think is something that Andrew Berry is going to really value moving forward. Now that they've sort of had their 2 off seasons of free agency binges, I think we'll see them be a little more conservative in free agency moving forward, because they'll take that Baltimore Raven approach of let's collect comp picks and really use those to our advantage. Right now, it's the time to be aggressive. You're going for it. You're trying to win the Super Bowl. And if you can get a cornerback like J.C. Horn who can help you do that in year one of his career, and by the way, help you in that cost control department because you've got a young guy on a rookie deal opposite Denzel Ward, who's probably going to start making a lot of money soon, that only helps long term.
We'll take a look at another mock draft, this one done by Tony Grossi. And interestingly enough, Tony has the Browns trading up a couple of spots with the Chicago Bears to make sure they get Greg Newsome. And Newsome is a guy that some people think could potentially fall to him at 26. Would you trade up a couple spots to get a guy like Newsome?
If that's the guy you want, yeah, I think you do move up to get him. Now, am I moving up to like number 12 to draft a guy or number 17 like you did with J.C. Horn? No, but if it's starting to get to me and I'm starting to get the sense that a couple teams in front of me might really like him, and that's part of the job of a GM is to figure that stuff out, then I might get aggressive and move up a couple slots to pick him. And the other thing that's in play now too, with Sheldon Richardson being gone is, do they like a guy like Christian Barmore out of Alabama? That might be a first round pick. So maybe you would get aggressive and move up to get somebody like that if you want to upgrade that defensive tackle room. But they are at a point in their roster build where if they see a specific player they like and they think he might go 3 or 4 spots ahead of them, then they need to use some of that draft capital to jump up and get him.
Dan Labbe and I are going to take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll look at some of the most recent national mock drafts. We'll see who the national pundits think the Browns might take at 26. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Sports for CLE continues. We're going to shift our focus to the Browns draft and number 26 overall. Let's bring back in Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter. And Dan, who do you like at 26? Who's on your wish list? If I said, what guy do you hope the Browns can get at 26? Who you telling me?
Well, a guy we've already talked about, Greg Newsome, I really like. I like addressing that cornerback position. So I guess just to mix it up, I still am really intrigued by Zaven Collins. I know he's a linebacker. I know that doesn't seem like in character for the Browns, but I think he's one of those guys. He's got all these great traits that you love. He's really good in coverage. He can play the football. He has an impact when it comes to forcing turnovers. And I think at his size, he can play with his hand in the dirt a little bit and play a little bit of a hybrid defensive end role. And I know he didn't get a ton of pass rush opportunities at Tulsa, but when he did, PFF gave him a really good pass rush grade. So I'm intrigued a lot by Zaven Collins and if the Browns might sort of surprise us all and take a linebacker, because I don't know if I view him, and not just a linebacker, but an off-ball linebacker. I just don't know if I view him as a traditional linebacker. I think he's very much a hybrid type player.
I agree with you, and Newsome is a guy I like. Here was my thought, and it kind of came to me as I was thinking about this today. I want him to take Jadeveon Clowney, and the reason is, and it's not matchup specific, but when you're playing guys like Lamar Jackson, like Patrick Mahomes, like Josh Allen, who you're going to have to deal with, you want a guy that is athletic enough to run him down and big enough that they can't give him the little brother treatment when he tries to tackle him. I think Jadeveon Clowney answers that as opposed to some of the safeties. Fair, unfair? Do you see where I'm going with that?
I think that's perfectly fair. And just imagine, right now, Lamar Jackson looking to run, and he's got Myles Garrett chasing him, and Jadeveon Clowney and Jadeveon Clowney, and then he's got these safeties out there as well. It could be tough for him. And the reality in the NFL, you mentioned those guys, but really just across the board, there are so few quarterbacks now that can't make plays with their legs. Some of them might be like Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, who are really fast and can make big plays. Some of them are like Patrick Mahomes, who create on the run and still throw downfield. Or like Baker Mayfield, who's not a super athlete, but he kills you when he decides he wants to take off and run, and he gets 8 yards on 3rd down and 6. So you really have to account almost across the board for every single quarterback being able to move and do something with his legs. And so having these safeties combined with Jadeveon Clowney and then all that speed and athleticism up front, you can really cause problems.
Yeah, it is. You want to upgrade the athleticism of that defense, and that has been apparent. Andrew Berry has done a real good job at identifying that and doing that so far. So Collins kind of intrigues me that way. Let's take a look. Charlie Casserly from NFL.com, a former general manager, did a mock draft recently, and he has Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah going to the Browns, which again is another intriguing guy, a different type of hybrid, but another hybrid linebacker.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're looking at in the linebacker position. I don't think you're looking for a guy who's like just a rusher or a guy who's just a run stopper. I think you've got to be able to cover a little bit. I think you've got to be able to do multiple things and line up in multiple ways. So be a linebacker, but also be a really big safety, or put your hand in the dirt and rush off the edge a little bit when you kick Jadeveon Clowney inside, or even kick Myles Garrett inside and cause those problems on 3rd down and long, because you don't know who's coming from where if you're the quarterback. And with that upgraded coverage in the back end, that quarterback's going to be holding the ball longer. So really, when you're looking at linebackers, if they are going to take a linebacker high, I would think it would have to be somebody with a lot of versatility who can wear a lot of different hats.
And that's definitely been the MO of this front office, versatility. And it seems like that's kind of the word that you look for now in the NFL. Now, Jonathan Jones from CBS Sports has them going cornerback, and this one I am not sure how I feel about. They have him taking Asante Samuel Jr. at 26 overall. Again, I think he's a really good cornerback. I don't know that I'd take him that high. And there's some size issues and those kind of things. Great bloodlines. What do you make of him at 26?
I feel like this is more of a positional pick than a player pick. You mentioned the good things about him, and I think he does check some boxes, but I just think Greg Newsome is kind of that. There's a line after him. I think after him, there is a drop-off at the cornerback position. So you've got J.C. Horn, you've got Patrick Surtain, you've got Greg Newsome, and then I think there's a drop-off. And so I almost feel like this is more of a positional pick in this mock as opposed to an actual player pick. And I don't know if the Browns would really reach just to fill a position. Maybe they really love the guy. I don't know. Maybe they see something in him and look at him and say, this is a guy who deserves to go in this spot, and they take him. But when I look at this mock, like I said, this feels more like you're addressing position as opposed to taking a guy who's like right at the top of your board.
Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. You can read Dan in the pages of the Plain Dealer. You can see him here on cleveland.com. You can read him on cleveland.com as well. Dan, as always, thanks for your time. Great insight. Appreciate it very much.
Yep, thanks a lot. Anytime.
We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, more draft talk. Tim Bielik, draft expert for cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer, will join us. Sports4CLE will continue talking NFL draft. Stay with us.
Presque Isle Downs and Casino has sports betting. Use one of our 50 state-of-the-art Bet America kiosks to place your bet and watch your favorite games on one of our many HD televisions or visit our sportsbook area. Only at Presque Isle Downs and Casino.
Better days are ahead. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So what are you waiting for? Register now for online and on-campus summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to Sports for CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking NFL draft. We'll welcome in draft analyst Tim Bielik. Tim works for cleveland.com as well as in the pages of the Plain Dealer. Tim, let's take a look at what you think the Jadeveon Clowney signing means for the Browns draft coming up.
I think something that it tells me is that by signing Jadeveon Clowney, they're kind of opening the doors to let this be kind of more of a best available pick. I felt like without Clowney, I would have leaned more towards getting an edge rusher at 26. Now they can still do that. They can still easily go for an edge rusher, depending on where the board falls. But I think with Clowney on board, they're really not needing to focus so much about needs. They could just focus on simply taking the best player on the board and in the draft where you're not necessarily planning for the upcoming season, but the one after. It's a smart proposition, and it puts you in a good spot.
Usually that's what really good franchises are able to do, is not necessarily go for a pick based on need. Talk to me, you and Ellis Williams, another one of the Browns beat reporters there, did a mock draft. Who'd you end up with at 26? Take me through that and what was going through your mind when you made the pick as well.
Well, I went a little off the board, I guess you could say. I went with Asante Samuel Jr., the corner out of Florida State. I actually did catch your previous segment, so I understand there may be some skepticism there. I understand the size is a limitation. I've talked before about short corners. Hey, I'm getting prepared. I'm being prepared for when I come on the show here. But I know he's a shorter guy, and I've talked about getting taller corners, how I think that's beneficial for the AFC North, but the more I thought about it, I think where he kind of lacks in size, he makes up for in how he plays the football. He's very agile. You know, you watch his highlight film, he really knows how to close on receivers. He knows how to play the football. I've talked about before how much I love bloodlines. I think as much as I would prefer the Browns probably take a taller corner, I think you get yourself in trouble if those top four corners are off the board, and then you're going to reach and take a taller corner who may not be as talented as Samuel. Because I think at the end of the day, talent should be the deciding factor on whether you take a player or not over somebody else.
Now, the other thing is you better have an attitude if you're going to play corner in the NFL, and that would be a plus. You know, his attitude is plus, being Asante Samuel's, and he gets that from his dad without question.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that Denzel Ward plays with a little bit of a physical ability, and obviously that's gotten into trouble a little bit when it comes to injuries. I think Samuel does play with a lot of that. There's plays of him blowing up plays in the backfield. There was even one I saw where he almost picked off a bubble screen. He just closes on it at full speed and does some crazy leap to knock the ball down. He almost intercepted it. I don't know if he got hurt on the play, but it was a crazy athletic play. So I think those things stick out for me with Asante Samuel Jr. I don't know if he's necessarily the pick at 26. If one of those top 4 corners that we talked about is there, I would take them over Samuel. But unless you're trading down for whatever reason and you really, really like Asante Samuel and you don't mind the idea of having 2 smaller corners on the field together, not a bad option, I think.
In the second round pick, who'd you have the Browns taking? I believe it's 59 overall, their second round pick.
Yeah, Ellis had that pick. He had the Browns taking Peyton Turner, the edge rusher from Houston, who I really like as a second round guy. We kind of had this fun back and forth of when one of us makes a pick, especially in the first round with the Browns second round pick, we kind of had some reaction. I like Peyton Turner. I love his versatility. He could play on the outside. He could play on the inside. The way I kind of saw the board was interesting because if you look at the mock draft where we were, there were 3 receivers I really liked there, but there's no questioning Peyton Turner's talent at that spot. He's a great fit, I think, for putting in the 4-3. We talked about versatility, how much that matters to the Browns. We saw that in the signings in the offseason, that they want guys who could do multiple things. And I see Turner as a guy who could provide an interior pass rush. So if he's there, he's worth a pick if they don't go edge in the first round.
Let's take a look at a mock draft. Charles Davis, NFL.com. He had the Browns taking a guy I know you like, Azeez Ojulari. If he's there at 26, you think the Browns hop on him? Do you think that would be a pick that would make sense for the Browns?
Yes, I do. I mean, I've obviously been on the Ojulari bandwagon for the past few weeks. He's still kind of my number one guy when it comes to the 26th pick, even though they have Takk McKinley and Jadeveon Clowney now along with Myles Garrett. But I do think you also have to look at, the fact that McKinley missed time the last 2 seasons. He had a shoulder injury in 2019 that took him out for a few games. He had the groin injury that limited him in 2020. We know about Jadeveon Clowney's injury history. So I think I can understand completely taking an edge because you still want a quality number 2 guy, and I think Ojulari can do that. And maybe he's a guy that if he plays well enough in 2021, you have a situation where you don't necessarily need to bring McKinley back or Clowney back if Ojulari is really good right away. And you can work him in there. You can have him in there and have a really effective 4-man defensive end rotation. And really, you can even do a lot of different things because Clowney and Garrett have the ability to move inside for the pass rush. So you can have 3 of those guys out there, and Ojulari could be one of those guys off the edge. So there's a lot of possibilities if they wanted to take him at 26.
Yeah, that question. A lot of quickness if you do that as well. Tim and I are going to take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll look at some potential draft day trades. We'll also have a little bit of Indians news, a voicemail of truth and reason from the Indians side of things. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Sports for CLE continues. We continue talking NFL draft with Tim Bielik, draft expert for cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer. Tim, let me throw this to you. This is a Bleacher Report, 7 plausible draft day trades. Now, they have the Browns getting the 23rd pick, so trading up 3 spots. Giving the Jets the 26th pick and David Njoku. My take of that is it must be a Jets fan proposing this trade, because I don't think I'd give David Njoku to move up just 3 spots. As a matter of fact, in another simulation, I gave up a 6th-round pick and was able to move up 3 spots. So that seems like an awful lot to move up just 3 spots.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're moving up about 8 spots, then maybe Njoku plus a 4th makes sense to move up that far. But giving up a guy, Njoku, who's still on the last year of his rookie deal, showed in the playoffs how productive he could be, especially against the Chiefs. Probably that's a lot. That seems like a lot to give up. I know the Browns drafted Harrison Bryant, which kind of says that they may not bring David Njoku back after the season. Njoku wants to trade out of Cleveland. I don't know if it will be enough to worth sending him away just to flip up with the team and move 3 spots. It would be more prudent to do that if you're going to make a more substantial move up the board. Say you really want to get one of those corners, but you don't think they're going to fall into the 20s.
Yeah, I would agree. And then this one is really intriguing. Browns get Stephon Gilmore. They give the Patriots the 89th pick, which would be the first of their 3rd rounds, and a 3rd round in 2022. The salary is that doesn't factor into it at this point. But if I can get Stephon Gilmore, a really, really good cornerback for 2/3, I do that every day of the week.
Me too. I mean, we've talked about before how the Browns have 9 picks coming into this draft. I can't imagine they're going to make all 9. So this is what you can do with these picks. You have these extra picks. If you're the Browns, this is a great way to do that. And putting a veteran alongside Denzel Ward at corner and Stephon Gilmore, you automatically have a very good 1-2 cornerback combination to really continue the revamp of that defensive secondary. And with teams like the Bills and the Chiefs who had that big-time passing game, you're going to want to find more ways to combat that. And I think if you get a guy like Gilmore and just give up 2/3, including next year's 3rd, which you could easily recoup in a trade later on, since the Browns have 2 4th-round picks, and they'll still have pick 91 if they want to move down, re-get a 3rd-round pick in 2022 from somebody else. It's just part of that asset management that we've seen Andrew Berry do in only a year and change, that it seems like it's going to be part of his plan and strategies to continue to accumulate future assets and not be shy in using them to trade for players.
All right, before I let you go, I did a mock draft where I did not trade up. So here is a simulated mock draft from Pro Football Focus as it came to me. And tell me how you think I did. So you see, I could have taken Bateman. I could have taken Moore. I went with the cornerback because I thought that was the place to get Greg Newsome, a corner from Northwestern. And then when you look at what I ended up doing, I ended up getting Peyton Turner in the 2nd round, Jamin Davis, and I took a quarterback in Davis Mills, who some people have projected to go late in the 1st round because he was sitting there in the 3rd. And you see I also got another corner, went wide receiver at 132 with Cade Johnson from South Dakota State. So go ahead. Tell me how you think I did. What do you like? What don't you like?
Well, I love the value of Jamin Davis. I know he's been mocked in 1st round, so if he makes it all the way to 89, that is a massive, massive steal in my mind. He's got 1st round potential. I know I've seen several mocks where he's been linked to the Browns in certain cases. I know in our dueling mock, he made it into the 2nd round. So if he makes it there, that'd be tremendous. Obviously, we've talked about Peyton Turner. Greg Newsome, I think, is becoming a more interesting 1st round option over the past few weeks. The quarterback thing really is interesting to me. When it comes to Davis Mills, this is a guy that really doesn't have a lot of experience. He was a 5-star prospect coming out of Stanford, and he's obviously risen up boards, but I don't know if he's got the experience of a guy that you necessarily want to take that early. I understand if there's teams that are quarterback desperate in that 2nd round, maybe the Giants, maybe the Patriots, maybe the Bears, maybe he goes there. But I think for the Browns, at least right now, I would think developmental quarterback is something you can kind of hold off on until Case Keenum's contract runs out. But that's just my opinion, at least. The rest of it really does look good. It looks like obviously focusing on the defense, which they still need to do some work on. So it's well done. I think if the Browns come away from the first 2 rounds of the draft with guys like Greg Newsome and Peyton Turner, they should be pretty happy with what they've done.
Tim Bielik, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Tim Bielik, draft expert for cleveland.com, as well as in the pages of the Plain Dealer. Tim, I'm sure we will be checking in with you the next couple of weeks as we lead up to the NFL draft here in Cleveland. Time for us to shift our attention to the Indians, and we got an Indians voicemail of Truth and Reason. Let's take a listen.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed to be an Indians fan. Same thing. We can't hit left-handed pitching. Been that way since for the last 20 years. Check the records. The numbers don't lie. Man, that ain't gonna make any moves. He's proved that when there's one player away and want to make a move. So all you do is keep picking up left-hand hitters, and what the teams do pitch left-handed pitching gets done. And if our pitching is so great, how come we give up double-digit runs to the Yankees in the playoffs last year if it's so great? And then, I know it was early, but we're not the Dodgers. You can overcome a slow start,
Again, voicemail of Truth and Reason. You see the number, 216-200-6650. Again, I get fans' frustration. It is a young team. It is a team whose offense has been challenged without question. But I also will say the Indians, it's not that they haven't been able to hit left-handed pitching. They haven't really been able to hit right-handed pitching either. The offense has struggled. The difference between left-handed pitching and right-handed pitching right now isn't that great. They're just having trouble hitting, and it is a small sample size. You got to give the guys who have not had the opportunity to do it regularly at the major league level, give them a chance. Now, where the pitching comes in, this young pitching staff is very intriguing, and the more I see of it, the more I like of it. And I'm not only saying the rotation, the bullpen is young and talented as well. John Morosi, guy I respect nationally, said this: Indians' window to win has not closed yet. They've won 7 of 10 with the youngest, not one of, the youngest pitching staffs in baseball. Every pitcher in their rotation is in his age 26 season or younger. That's a very good thing. That bullpen has some young arms and a nice veteran mix. That pitching staff, let's see how it goes again. Very early, I'll say the same thing with the pitching staff. Let's see when they get to face the bigger hitters, the bigger hitting lineups, how they do. So far, so good, though. That pitching staff has been dynamite. Well, yesterday Indians had a nice job kind of coming from behind. Looked like that game was slipping away from them. They got the split with the White Sox in that 4-game series thanks to Jose Ramirez's 2-run homer that got them rolling. And Terry Francona, happy to see Jose Ramirez starting to swing the bat well.
We were kind of at a point where we'll take anything. And he had some really good swings. I mean, they ran some really good pitching at us, not just the starters, but the relievers. And we had to scratch for everything we got. But you know what? It was enough today. Good to see anybody push some runs across, but I agree. He took some good swings today. He fouled a couple back, and I know he was getting frustrated, but not only to get us on the board, but to give us a lead. And then, you know what? We did some good things today. When you're not swinging the bats like you want, we got a bunt down. We got a couple runners over. We pushed the, run into first. Those are things that make me feel good that, okay, they're not feeling sorry for themselves, because you're not always going to be hot. And they played with energy today, and that was good.
Indians open up a weekend series against the Reds. We get to see the pitcher hit. Isn't that exciting? We will see you again Monday. Doug Lesmerises scheduled to join us. We'll talk plenty of Browns. We'll also talk a little bit about the Indians as they wrap up this weekend series with Cincinnati. 4 o'clock Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you Monday right here on Sports for CLE.